Our target was to be able to develop a solution that was faster and more economical, more sustainable, and delivered healthy, beautiful housing for the missing middle. Rebuild the middle class in the United States, which has been shrinking for many decades now. And so this is kind of the problem that we've been trying to solve with our solution.
I'm joined by Katy Reynolds and Mike Gwynn from SHIBUSA Systems, a company transforming the home building industry by delivering climate resilient, elegant housing that's faster, more sustainable, and more economical than traditional methods. You guys moved construction out of the factory, but you guys have actually brought the factory intelligence to the site.
Our factory is on site. We apply all the same rigor and concepts that you do in an enclosed factory on site. So we've applied those to there.
Welcome back to the Advisor AI Solutions podcast, where we sit down with the builders, engineers, and innovators who are quietly reshaping how the world is built. Today's conversation is especially timely. I'm joined by Katy Reynolds and Mike Gwynn from SHIBUSA Systems, a company transforming the home building industry by delivering climate resilient, elegant housing that's faster, more sustainable, and more economical than traditional methods. Their systems-based approach combines data-driven digital housing models with pre-engineered components to create an on-site construction solution that outperforms both factory-built and conventional residential construction. Katy and Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you for having us.
So guys, for listeners hearing about SHIBUSA Systems for the first time, can one of you guys give just a quick high-level snapshot of what SHIBUSA Systems is and maybe the core problem you guys are solving?
Sure. I'll take that one. And so most people know today that housing, the cost of delivering housing, one, takes an incredibly long time from concept through to completion and is extremely expensive. And so for many home builders today, even for the large home builders nationwide, as well as the small micro home builders throughout communities across the country, it's become economically infeasible to deliver housing, except for maybe at the high end luxury housing or at the lowest end for affordable housing where there are a lot of tax credits and other incentives available. But when you're trying to do somewhere in the middle level ranges, it's very difficult to deliver housing. So we wanted to come up with a solution that made housing for that missing middle segment, that not for low income housing, but that missing middle segment for people like teachers and first responders, construction workers, ag workers, hospitality workers, who all make a decent income but can't afford to live in the communities where they work. And these people are fundamental to sustaining our communities. And we need to figure out a solution to build more housing for them within our communities. And so our target was to be able to develop a solution that was faster and more economical, more sustainable, and delivered healthy, beautiful housing for the missing middle. And to also help really rebuild the middle class in the United States, which has been shrinking for many decades now. And so this is kind of the problem that we've been trying to solve with our solution.
That's absolutely wonderful, Katy. You say that's the missing piece, but it also, if I'm not mistaken, it's also the majority of the puzzle as well, right? But so let's rewind just a little bit here. Where did the original idea for the SHIBUSA system come from?
Sure. My background for 35 years was working on Wall Street in investment banking and private equity. And after we came out of the Great Recession, I was pretty tired of that and wanted to do something to leave a more positive legacy. And I had been working for a private equity firm focused on clean tech, and we had made quite a few investments in sustainable building materials such as LED lighting. And through that, I had a lot of exposure to the construction industry, and for the first time ever saw how inefficient and wasteful it was. You just have to go to a job site to see wasted materials all over the place and in organization, and people making a gazillion trips a day to Home Depot and Lowe's. And walking back and forth with their trucks and everything. And so I thought, okay, there's got to be a better way to build housing sustainably and affordably. And so I did first did a development in Sacramento, 16 powerhouse. And I set out to prove back in 2013, 2014 that you could have the triple bottom line, that you could be uber green, and that you could be socially and economically affordable, and you could give your investors market rate returns, and that it just focused on managing a project well. And so, and then I achieved that goal with 16 powerhouse in Sacramento. It was net zero energy, LEED platinum, self-generating elevator, stackable parking, vertical farming, etc., gray water recycling. And we finished on time, on budget, and gave our investors more greater than market rate returns. So it was all kind of about really managing the project efficiently from concept through to completion. Shortly after that, I started getting consulting assignments, one of which took me to New Orleans, Louisiana, where I had never been before. And I, like everybody else, did a tour through the lower Ninth Ward. And at the time, saw 120 of Brad Pitt's Make It Right houses, many of which were already starting to fall apart. And I thought, oh my gosh, these were by the best architects in the world, some of the most sustainable materials, and these houses are filled with mold and mildew. What went wrong? Spent a lot of time studying their methodology, and then also spent a lot of time studying modular and manufactured and prefab, panelized, all sorts of different housing types to see what seemed to be working well and what seemed not to be working well. And actually, I didn't find any solution that was working really well. And because fabricated, prefab, and manufactured housing, when you have a manufacturing facility, you're very limited both geographically and volumetrically. I mean, maybe you can produce one module a day or one house a day, and that's 365 a year. So if you're going to expand, you've got to build another factory for tens of millions of dollars. And so the capital investment is incredible. And the carbon footprint for those was huge as well, because you were shipping all your materials once to a factory out in the middle of nowhere, massively packaging it up, and then shipping it, 300 miles to the delivery site. And so there was a lot of materials waste, a lot of carbon footprint and expense and trucking and insurance and fuel, etc. So Mike and I just happened to be talking. I was semi-retired from Wall Street, and he was semi-retired from Silicon Valley. And I was explaining to him of trying to figure out a way to build more efficiently on site, because everybody was really focused on off-site manufacturing of housing. And to me, ultimately, that was just not a financially viable or sustainable solution. And so that's kind of how we came to really focus on an on-site solution. And Mike, I can hand it over to you, because you are really coming from Silicon Valley and systems and operations, really, we're kind of the mastermind behind the whole systems thinking approach.
Sure. So, as Katy mentioned, we got together and started really thinking about the problem. And my background, 35 plus years in Silicon Valley, was really around system optimization. And when we talk about systems, it's not just technology. A system is all the different components, from people, from process, technology, and it's systems within systems. How do they talk together? So as we started to talk about the problem, we realized no one solves it as a system. Everyone looks at it as individual components. I'm going to take the on-site construction and move it off-site. Okay, that's great. But are you addressing the fabrication component? Are you addressing the logistics components? Are you addressing the on-site components? Are you addressing the design components? They're all interrelated systems that talk together. And so that's where we really started to focus, looking at it as a system, how everything fits. So at the end of the day, in construction, it really comes down to being able to create, I'll call it a predictable process that takes place, that You know, if you start here, you're going to finish here, and you know what the outcome is going to be. And you have a reliable workflow. Because we started to look at it more as a workflow and data, how everything flowed through the system, taking it from the design to the permitting to the logistics and supply chain to the on-site building, how every little impact really, what were the knock-on effects? And so that's where we really able to look. So we know a decision here, all the trickle down effects to all the different aspects of it. And that created a really simple system that we were able to scale and really move forward and really solve the problem of the cost, being it, time, labor, and all of that.
That's terrific, Mike. You'd mentioned a system as a whole, right? Not being able to take different pieces a la carte and just focus on one. You really have to think about the entire process from start to finish to really talk about efficiency and be able to really streamline things. And then to kind of unpack what Katy had said, I really, that project in Sacramento, I can only imagine it was absolutely stunning and incredible by the sounds of it. But then using your actual experiences from New Orleans, and then your insights on modular systems and the factory built, being able to identify what was wrong with that as far as the carbon footprint goes, and then identify those gaps, and then be able to team up with Mike and create a solution that really solves that. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Mike, from a technical standpoint, when did you realize this couldn't just be an iteration on existing construction methods, but it's actually an entirely new system?
Well, I think a lot of it is our perspective where we came and looked at it. Most of the people think of it as a physical product. And then we kind of approach it more from a digital perspective and really looking at the whole product, the end to end. How does it work digitally? What are the failure points within the existing construct of construction? Manual handoffs, manual translations, um, a workflow that is chopped up and broken down by multiple players in the market. So how do you consolidate that workflow? How do you make it continuous? And how do you get the data really flowing through so that, the people, an example is someone's on site, right? One of the challenges now you've got in the old world, physical copies, say architectural drawings. You get to on site, someone has to figure out how do you translate that into reality. Big problem. So you can have a great design and everything, but on site, if you can't translate it, it's a big variable. So we look at it more, having the digital copy, being able to move everything down so that the people on site can assemble it. So that's really kind of an example of tying two aspects together to simplify it. And then you actually open up your user base, so to say. You have more builders that can actually work in that market. So when you do the system, it's not that single solution that you're looking for one unit to be built. You're looking at a system that can enable and scale to build multiple units. In order to do that, that's taking into account the people aspect of it with the design aspect.
No, that's terrific. Being able to, have the attribute to be able to amplify what you guys are already building, right? So when trade-offs come up between, say, speed, cost, sustainability, and performance, what principle ultimately guides your guys' decisions within Shibusa?
So I'll take this one. So that's exactly right. We have a rubric of cost, ease of implementation, practicality to the end user, sustainability features, health, and aesthetics. So we have that rubric and we make a decision. So often a material will be more expensive, but if it's easier to install and it eliminates other material and reduces a lot of time in installation, then we will go with that more expensive material to ease the implementation and installation. So ease of installation on site is really where you're going to save costs and time, because if you can, we really took the average number of people on a job site from 15 down to 5, and the skill set from 15 journeymen at 75 to $100 an hour down to 2 journeymen and 3 you know newly or semi-skilled people, so that we really do reduce the number of people and the skill set and the hourly wage required. And so this really, so we will spend more on the quality of the material to just increase the speed and the likelihood of success on the job site. Standardization and repeatability and quality control.
That sounds
That
absolutely
makes
astounding. Being able to cut it down from 15 to 5, experienced, skilled workers. Especially when there's a massive shortage of skilled labor out there.
yes.
So let's break this down in plain English, guys. So what does the Shibusa system actually do, and like how is it different from what people typically think of as prefab or modular?
So we are not modular construction. Modular construction is factory built, where they actually build a big 3D volumetric piece and ship it to your job site. So we call ourselves pre-engineered. So there are certain pieces of our housing that are pre-engineered. Our framing system, which is our timbers, and our structural insulated panels. So we do use panels and we use a framing system. And then on our internal walls, they are light gauge steel, and those are fabricated. So we have digitized shop drawings that go from our machine to our fabricator's machine. And we can use any fabricator that has that equipment across the country, so that we're not beholden to just one fabricator, that it's more of a commodity. But we do want to have long-term relationships with our fabricators and suppliers, but the onus is on them to keep their facilities best in class and up to grade, so that we never have to manufacture anything ourselves, and that we can plug and play with suppliers closest to our job sites across the country, further reducing time, cost, and waste. So we call it pre-engineered instead of fabricated. Our design, though, is modular, because we design on a bay system, so that we can expand in width, we can expand in depth, and we can go up 3 stories. And so that way, our bays are either 12 by 12, 12 by 6, or 12 by 16. So that we do have that standard measurement, so that when we are fabricating materials or purchasing off the shelf materials, so 65% of our materials are off the shelf: doors, windows, cabinetry, flooring, decking. And it's only really the building envelope, the framing system, and the interior framing system that is proprietary to Shibusa.
Okay, so do you guys ever have challenges with achieving like precision that typically you'd only be able to achieve in factory environments?
So a lot of the system and
Go
the
ahead.
design is to build in different tolerances within the system. So that's part of looking at the system as a whole. And I'll give you an example: is leveraging templates, so that when someone puts something in place, it goes right in place. We complement that with those templates are built digitally, so that the process, when it goes to the fabricator, they have a digital design exactly what needs to be. So we know exactly what's going to come up. It's going to go in the spot. And then someone just puts the pieces together and it comes out just like in the factory. So essentially what our philosophy is, our factory is on site. We apply all the same rigor and concepts that you do in a enclosed factory on site. So we've applied those to there.
That's amazing, right? So you guys moved construction out of the factory, but you guys have actually brought the factory intelligence to the site.
Yes. And it also, to ensure our precision and quality control, that's why we digitize all of our designs down to the nails and screws, so that in 3D, we can model everything ahead of time and know if there's going to be any clashes. And so that way we are ensured precision on site with all of our housing models. And actually, I would say that our system for delivering flat packing and shipping all the materials to the job site, and the fact that our building envelope goes really well, when you're talking about factory built housing, you have to then pick it up, put it on the back of a flatbed truck, strap it in, haul it over, land and sea, and then have, really heavy crane equipment pick it up and put it in place. And there's a lot of damage that happens that has to be repaired once those modules are put back on the site. So we don't endure that damage.
Right. A lot of risk as well in doing so.
Yeah. I've been, I have been behind a trailer on I-10 when the entire home came off the back. I mean, I was probably 10 cars behind, but I was stuck there for 2 hours while that mess was cleaned up. So the insurance costs for those companies also increases the cost of factory built housing.
Oh, certainly. I can only imagine so. Okay, so um, Katie, or maybe Katie, this one's for you. From a homeowner or developer's perspective, what does this really unlock?
What it unlocks is a one stop shop. Right now, developers, and even with modular or factory built housing, some successful ones out there are holding the developer's hand from beginning to end so that you sign one contract and the factory built housing will take care of everything. But when a developer comes to us, they plan with us right from the beginning. They sign two agreements with us. One's a planning agreement, and we do all of the design work and permit set. And then once we know that the project is economically viable and permittable, they then sign a product delivery. But we hire the entire team of architects, structural, civil, and here in California, Title 24, and also the general contractor, because we work with architects, structural, all of those who are long term partners in different regions and have agreed to adhere to our standards and quality control, as well as our mission in delivering the highest value for the least cost. And so we know when we're putting a team together for our developer client, whether it's putting an ADU in their backyard or building a more a PUD, that they know that we are all mission aligned to delivering on that, the highest quality for the least cost in the least amount of time.
That's perfect, right? And providing long-term value in it as well. But you guys also have talked about your homes being resilient as well. So, how does Shibusa perform in, say, wildfire zones, seismic regions, or climate stress environments?
So I'll talk a little bit about that, Katie. So a couple things. It comes back to the pre-engineering. Out of the gate, since we have a repeatable system, we've already engineered, as an example, for in California, seismic zone D. That's a standard attribute of the home. We originally started down in the South, New Orleans, and that was really driven. You think environmentally, it's a very tough place to build. Water is one of the biggest enemies of a home, and you don't get much more water than you do down there from hurricanes and wind and everything. So just like we built zone D in, we also designed in or pre-engineered 160-mile-an-hour wind capability. So that's transferable across everything. So they're very resilient from that standpoint. Then when we look at coming to California, the hurricanes, and then you think about fire, all right, all metal roofs. We don't use, that's the only roof we use, and it's standard and consistent. The wall coverings on the external of the house have WUI rated materials. That's out of the gates. It's not an upgrade, that's just standard. And we get that benefit because of being consistent. We're able to do everything that way all the time. And so it doesn't drive the costs out. We also took about a lot of the engineering when you think about it, from a fire, a lot of houses burn from within. So our houses are designed to be very tight and avoid uh, things, fire to get inside of it, because of it uses what we call ERV systems. Fresh air is filtered and brought in mechanically, and it's controlled that way. The house and the environment of it, so the pressures, the windows don't break, so fire doesn't get in and burn the house. So that's all little engineering components build up to the system to make it more resilient than your traditional home, because it's only as strong as its weakest link.
That's absolutely a stat. Like that's a extraordinary how you guys have thought of it. Like almost everything, and these little pieces of engineering just creates the whole of the system to build something that is resilient and worth the money in the long term.
Yeah. So yeah, so the building envelope is tight, and if a fire is coming, if the homeowner shuts all the windows and shuts the doors, it is so airtight that it will should keep the heat out. And we build with heavy timber, which chars and doesn't burn. I mean, the fires in Altadena and Pacific Palisades were at an intensity never seen. So, you know, until we would go through one of those, but we've really have designed to be as fire resistant as possible.
Absolutely, that's wonderful, guys. Okay, so we're talking about sustainability. So a lot of times, sustainability now it's becoming a bit of a buzzword and maybe even a bit of a shortcut. What are the biggest misconceptions in your guys' minds you see around prefab, modular, and factory built housing now?
Well, sustainability to me means a couple of things. One, sustainable building materials that are built to last a long time and are made from, healthier or more environmentally safe materials. But sustainable also means you have to be sustainable financially, because if you aren't green on the bottom line, you are not going to sustain yourself into the future. So, for instance, the Make It Right houses in the lower Ninth Ward, they used Brad Pitt's architects used all these sustainable materials, but those houses weren't designed or engineered properly for sustainability. So, and they also, because they used new and untested sustainable products, they also were not sustainable. And those houses, when they were first built back in 2010, and it was $400 a square foot back then. I mean, in New Orleans, they can barely afford $150 a square foot. So, um, you've got to be sustainable from all. You can't just be sustainable in one element. And like I said, we often have a rubric. And so for me, with factory built housing, because it's so expensive to have a manufacturing facility and then so expensive to ship and to package up and to have the heavy equipment on the job site, you might use sustainable materials when you're putting the house together inside your factory, but when you add in everything else, the carbon footprint is enormous and the cost is a lot. And ultimately, I think that's why we're seeing a lot of factory built housing companies go under, because they
Right.
just can't sustain their factory.
Yeah, that's so true, and I love your perspective on that, Katie, because you're so right. Just because your philosophy is green and health and environmentally forward, as well as being able to use sustainable materials, but at the bottom, at the end of the day, to be a successful company, your bottom line still has to be in the green as well.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say factory built housing is far more sustainable than conventional construction. I mean, they've conventional construction, you have about 35% waste on a job site because people are making mistakes, throwing stuff out. They're just unorganized. And factory built is a lot cleaner and more streamlined. And many of them do have a focus on using sustainable building materials. But when you take the whole picture, they're not very sustainable.
Right, right. Okay, so If you could rewrite the sustainability playbook for housing in general, what would the industry, what would you say that the industry has to stop doing immediately, and what would it start doing instead?
Uh, that's a loaded question. Um, because the industry is so fragmented, right? You have prefab stuff, panelized stuff, you have modules, you have manufactured housing, you have 3D printing, you have what we're doing, and then you have conventional. Uh, I think, I mean, it's hard to tell them to stop doing any one thing, but what we've learned is now we have made the on-site build, or actually building the product, really streamlined from, and so we've gotten that whole process super fast. Now we have to work on the planning process, because starting with the developer, you then have to go to the planning department and get approval to do whatever it is you want to do, and they take a long time to get back to you. And then you have to get it permitted, and you have to spend a lot of time with the utilities. And this one woman I'm working with is building a little 12-foot by 24-foot ADU in her mother's backyard. And, it's less than 300 square feet. And the local water company wants to charge $6,800 to put in a new water meter. And, and because if the water company does that and requires all that new hookup, then the city must require it on their side, which added another 4,000. So we went in and made the case, please, come on, we're all trying to solve the housing price, and you're just making it slower and more expensive. And so they did, to their credit, take a look at it and said, oh, we're waiving that. So I've been spending a lot of time trying to work with the planning and building departments and the utilities to be part of the change. But a lot of building departments are overwhelmed by the number of permits that they have to review, so they're outsourcing it to these third party reviewers. And we got a review back last week that said we had to, we were just doing a fenced in trash enclosure for the garbage cans on the site, and they wanted to make us do a resilient shed that was structurally engineered. And we're like, you know, it's for garbage, it's not for people. And they were trying to claim, oh, and then because it's in your setback from the lines, then you're going to have to make your house smaller. And that, that kind of stuff is just ridiculous. It's expensive, it slows it down, it ruins a person's project. So we did get the building department again to override the reviewer, trying to tell us that our design plans were, not good enough. And so it's, right now, if from design through to move-in ready, the move-in ready part of the on-site construction for us is about 20% of the time. 80% is spent going back and forth on designs. And we are getting that process faster because we've digitized stuff and we've created a template, and we can understand site feasibility and drop things in. But it's the interaction with the city, the municipalities, the utilities, and these third-party reviewers that we need to change that whole part of the system.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I've heard that over and over from many designers and builders. Okay, so maybe this is a good segue question then. So we've heard the state of California has taken interest in what you guys are doing at SHIBUSA. What's driving that attention?
Yeah, interesting. So the state of California and the Turner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley have really been focused on offsite manufacturing and factory built housing, thinking that is the solution for the future. And so they've been putting a lot into that. And factory built and manufactured housing's been around for 70 years. And for a long time, it was a really good solution. When you drive across America, you see tons of communities with mobile homes and manufactured housing. Although, we also now see that those houses last about 30 years. And then you really have to replace them, or you have to do a lot of renovation work. So they had never seen or heard of anything like what we're doing. And the buzzword for the past 10 years has all been factory built, factory built, factory built. So you've seen lots of companies start up manufacturing operations, and many go under, many consolidate. Uh, so that's kind of why we said, let's take a different tact. Let's change the paradigm. Why is on-site so evil? Can't we make it, shipping materials once and with less labor? That's really where the challenge is. And you're always going to have to have the same building materials in a house. But if we can get them precise and standardized so that we're not having, we get the waste factor under 5%, then, let's really focus on site. And so once they heard about what we were doing last fall, they're now very interested in working with us and figuring out how to help, make us work.
Yeah. And as you think about it,
So,
I'll just add a little something to it, is that offsite manufacturing creates its own little industry, right? It's a manufacturing plant. Whereas it's not taking advantage of the existing, it's building something new, as opposed to taking advantage of existing infrastructure that's in place. All you're doing, instead of shipping from the original source to the where it needs to go, you're shipping to a third party, consolidating, come through. So if you start to look at it that way, it comes back. It's a bigger benefit for the community because more work's done locally, because the materials come and it's the local industry that's assembling the home, that's utilizing everything. It's the local fabricators that are fabricating everything to be put into the home. It's existing distribution networks that are providing it. We're not creating yet another overlay. And then as soon as you do that, which sucks more cost out of the ultimate homeowner's pocket, right? So how do we reduce all that? How does it get it closer to the community? So it's really looking at that workflow from the design to the end user who moves in. How do we shrink that and get it closer and closer together?
yep. I wanted to add one more thing to that, because as you just talked about the labor issue, right? We have a housing crisis because we have a labor shortage. And so, how do you solve the labor shortage? And Factory Built Housing said, okay, we're going to put this in a factory with a lot of machinery and some, factory workers, and make it faster. So, but we said, as Mike said, let's just look at how we can build a house on site with fewer people. And so you can either pay people to commute, out to the middle of nowhere to a factory for, 20 to 25 dollar an hour jobs. Or with our solution, you can build a home building career. You can build a home building business. So our teams that go on a job site are micro home builders. And, they might start out as one of the unskilled junior team members, but they can work their way up to be a team leader pretty quickly. So they have much more upward mobility, and with our, they can plug into our system. And the more SHIBUSA houses that are sold, that we need more and more builders. So it's actually allows them to be entrepreneurial and not just be a factory worker, but to have a really good, impactful, lucrative career. And the other thing I wanted to say is that with residential construction, less than 5% of residential construction workers are women. And those women are mainly in clerical roles. With our precision component on-site assembly, we've designed it so that women can pick up the pieces and put them. You do not have to be a brawny guy. So many more women can go into residential construction with our system. And we really want to work with local trade schools and really encourage many more people to go into construction. A lot of people, chase shiny objects and want to go into technology or whatever. Well, we are a form of technology, but we really need to encourage more people to go into home building. And so that was another reason for developing our system the way we did.
That's truly extraordinary, guys. How you guys have created this system, with technology, but then also have it solves so many different issues out there, whether it's community, uh, you know, increasing impact within the work labor force, and as well as enabling female workers in the trades as well. I think that's absolutely massive.
Yeah, you can't sustain a community if you don't have people within it that can build homes.
That's just it, Katie. So, all right. So, a lot of companies also talk about innovation as well, but a lot of them actually don't survive all as well. So, what did scaling look like during your guys' recent stealth phase, and why was that important to you guys?
So, Mike, you can take that one.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's all about scale. That's what we were designing around. That's one of our core philosophies that we look at. How do we scale? And that comes in. We are an asset light model. You talk about resilience in the home. You also have to talk about resilience in your business. So our model was around scale, and how do we do that? By being resilient, by being an asset light model. And that's where we bring the technology in. So, all these different components, and this again, back to system thinking, so that we can focus on that, so that we've got the partners, we've got the model and the data set up, so that then when it comes to scale, we're able to talk to anyone, anywhere, and get a predictable outcome and result of the home product. So it can move from region to region very simply. So that's what a lot of the work has been in the stealth mode. When you talk about is what have we been setting up? We've designed the system really to take advantage of technology that's coming down the pipe, as opposed to a lot of organizations that are trying to readapt their systems to be able to use AI, so to say. We truly believe there's going to be a complete change, an industry change, or the construct with regards to how modeling and designing really goes into construction. We've built our whole model around that, is putting that in place so that we're not trying to put a patch or an add-on or a fix. Our system is designed to take full advantage of what AI can bring, not just optimize bad or existing processes, but actually, like as I mentioned, change the construct of what people think about, as an example, in building information modeling, BIM, or virtual design construction. We're going to see a complete change there. And we've designed really our model to take advantage of that. So for us, it's going to be just a small step change, to get to it. Where others, it's going to be, they're going to have to redo their entire business model to be able to fully take advantage of that.
Right. So it sounds like you guys have taken the time to really think, 2, 3 steps ahead, to be able to, when the time is right, be able to move quickly and go far as well.
Yes. And I think there's two components to that. There's one from a technology where the market's going, but it's also, we were very disciplined in how we put the system together. We go out, do a unit, check the end-to-end system, get our learnings, apply them, and then do another one. We didn't do a shotgun where we tried to put a bunch of things out there in the market. We don't mind, it doesn't bother us to make a mistake once. What does bother us is if we make a mistake hundreds or thousands of times. So that's why we were very intentional on our rollout to go through and make sure we addressed all these different components, understood the full scope of the system, all the interrelated impacts of what's going on. So we learn, improve, learn, improve, learn, improve, to get the system to a point where it is repeatable, predictable, and we're not making mistakes.
Certainly, right. The proof is in the data and learning from it.
Yes.
Okay. So as we move into 2026, guys, you guys are obviously moving into a more intentional growth phase. What does that look like for SHIBUSA in 2026?
This year, we're really focused on ADUs. And so we have several ADU models that we've created for California, and especially also Hawaii, that has restrictions, sometimes 500 square feet, 800 square feet, and 1,200 square feet. So we tried to work within the requirements for the Hawaiian region. The other big rollout is also in Hawaii. We believe we have an advantage over factory built housing because they have to ship two at a time, on a container ship, coming across the ocean and then barge it in between islands, where our materials can be flat packed and shipped over. And so, for instance, the island of Molokai is really suffering from lack of housing because it's just too expensive to do it the conventional way, and it's too challenging to get factory built housing onto the island. But when we can provide the precision components and work with the people on the island themselves to build their own houses, it makes a big difference in cost and doability. So we feel that when you have difficult places like that on islands or up in the mountains or out in rural areas, that our system is much easier is much more economically viable and physically feasible to deliver. So those are two of our big push areas this year, and also really getting our name out there in disaster recovery, building both in Maui and then at Los Angeles and Altadena and Pacific Palisades, helping people recover from their home losses due to the fires.
Okay, is that the method, like primarily reaching out to other builders in the areas, or are you guys going after different designers to increase that reach?
It's going to the builders because so in Altadena, we're working with a general contractor down there because we do bring the design process and then we need to train them to build. And so our clients tend to be developers and builders.
Okay, lovely. All right. So, guys, before we start to wrap up here, just a couple more questions. Um, what's one trend that you guys are seeing that will reshape construction faster than other people might expect that you guys are potentially noticing?
Well, for me, I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's a couple trends that I'm going to jump right in. I really believe AI can have a significant impact on what we do. And I'm not saying that just for the sake of AI for the sake of AI. Yeah, I think a lot of people look at it and think of it in terms of how do you optimize existing processes. Yeah, it's going to take one of two paths. It's either going to be transformative or it'll be optimization. We look at it as transformative and we see how that can actually happen. And you're starting to see it today, and the momentum will pick up. And I think the organizations that just look at it as an optimization to do it are going to be left behind. You really have to think about it completely different with a completely different set of eyes and how things will actually work together. And I think
Right.
AI is going to will actually deliver that.
And then I will talk. So that's really technology, really helping to augment the construction process. And then from a policy side, for a while there, we saw municipalities and states and the federal government giving home buyers grants, like talking about giving them 25,000 or 50,000. And to me, that was absolutely the wrong way economically because they were just putting more fuel on the fire, increasing demand without increasing supply. And all that was doing was just raising the cost of housing. So finally, economics has played a role in shaping policy. And a lot now, states and municipalities are realizing that they have to increase supply faster. So, as I mentioned, with municipalities and utilities really speeding up the planning and permitting process, shortening that so that we can get to the job site and start building uh, has really is really going to impact the volume of construction.
Yeah, that's going to be absolutely huge. I think that's going to be one of the biggest factors is expediting that whole process and getting that streamlined from start to finish. Okay. Um, so for our listeners, guys, uh, who want to learn more about Shibusa systems or to follow your guys' work, where should they go?
So they can obviously go to our website, and to I do post mostly on LinkedIn, but we do some Instagram and Facebook, and we are about to launch a Substack feed, so people will be able to follow us on Substack, and I'll be making that announcement next month on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I'll definitely be sure to pin your guys' tags and your site as well in our notes. And this one's for both of you guys. Uh, if you guys could leave the construction industry or our audience with one message or one challenge to live a more sustainable life, what would that be? Katie?
So our audience to lead a more sustainable life. Yeah, I mean, I do feel construction sites are the most wasteful that I've ever seen. But I do think that, if everybody could really be much more intentional about the water that they use, the power, just always turning out the lights, not leaving the water running, whether you're brushing your teeth or washing your dishes. And actually, people don't know this, but you're better off putting your dirty dishes in the dishwasher and letting your dishwasher clean them than, hand washing them. Hand washing them is super wasteful, both in terms of the soap into the environment and the waste of the water. So if people use their dishwashers more, we'd have a more sustainable future. But there's just, I think, I see people all the time just not thinking about the garbage that they're throwing out, and trying to recycle more, or just being more conscientious about the environment.
Absolutely. Just be more mindful of your actions, right?
Yes, mindful of your actions. Yes.
And yourself, Mike?
Well, I think that's a component, and this is where I'm going to my system thinking. I start to think about individuals. Yes, be mindful of yourself, which is step one, but then be mindful of actions related to that decision or activity that you're doing. So take it the next level. If you're choosing a material, oh yeah, that's sustainable. What went into that? Yeah. Is it all, start to track it back and start to think about working upstream. So that sustainability isn't just on you, but how the precursors to your activity, what impacts does that have? And will that redirect or change how you're doing your specific or aware of your specific impacts on sustainability? So think of yourself as part of the bigger system when you're making a decision.
Totally right. There's a ripple effect for everything we do. Okay, so Katie, Mike, thank you guys so much for this wonderful conversation. It's been both powerful and refreshingly honest. I absolutely love what you guys are doing with Shibusa. I can't wait to learn and follow you guys as you guys spread your system throughout the rest of North America. And to our listeners, if you guys have found value here, please subscribe, share this episode, and follow along with us as we continue exploring how other systems, technology, and truth are reshaping sustainable industries. And until next time, automate the ordinary, scale the extraordinary. Peace.